Hello, my friends. Happy Sunday. I thought today I would bring you into a little corner of my kitchen because isn't that where we hang out with family? Isn't that where so many stories are not only told, but a lot of stories happen too, right? I love hanging out in the kitchen with my family. My kids, even though they're grown, a lot of times on Sundays they'll come in and we'll just cook together and hang out. Do you guys do that? Do you cook with your mom and dad? Yeah. Your sisters, brothers, cousins? Yeah. It's a fun place to hang out, and this story has a lot to do with kitchen, so I thought we'd just kind of join together here. I hope you guys are all right with that. Have you noticed that the story of Genesis and our whole Bible, it's like a big family tree? So families hang out in the kitchen, big family tree of the Bible. Who's the person we've been talking about that God said, I'm going to pull you out. I'm going to make a nation that I want you to watch over, and I want you to tell them, I want you to lead them to never forget about me. Do you guys remember who that was? That's right. You guys are so smart. That was Abraham. And he was given all that land. He said, as far as you can see, all this land will be for you and your children and their children and so on and so on and so on. And your descendants will be as many, you guys tell me, right, as the stars in the sky. So that was Abraham. And last week we talked about Abraham getting very old. And then he had a baby. And that baby grew up. Who was that? It was Isaac, right? And last week we talked about Isaac and Rebecca getting married. Xsuch a sweet story, and such a story of faithfulness and prayer, right? That servant praying and asking God, which woman should be the one to marry Isaac? Because it was important. Yeah. And so Isaac and Rebecca have grown up. They're married now, and they haven't had any babies. And so they're praying, and Isaac prays to God. And because God is a prayer listening and a prayer answering God, he finally blesses them with not one, two babies. Can you believe it? They had twins. Well, as these twins were growing in Rebecca's belly, the Bible says the twins were fighting. Could you imagine that? All right, we've got a couple of twins in our kindergarten class. We've got Jacob and Judah and William and Lucas. Do you guys think you guys were fighting inside your mommy's belly? You will never know unless you ask your mom, and I bet she could tell you. But God was, they were fighting, and Rebecca says, God, what's going on? Why are these babies just arguing or fighting inside my belly? And God says, your babies will be of two nations, and they will be separate. So already God was telling them, there's a plan, and it's going to be two different paths. These babies are not going to grow up as brothers who go together. They're going to separate, right? And then it says the older one will be stronger, and the older will serve the younger. Now that is not normal for that culture at that time. So Rebecca knew, all right, God already has something going on. He already has a plan with these two. And let's see what it is. Well, time came and two babies were born. The first one was Esau, and he came out and he was a furry little guy. He had lots of red hair on him, and so Esau means red. And Isaac loved Esau. He was going to grow up to be a hunter and a fisherman, and he would go out and he would go out into nature, and he would bring back meat to cook. And so he was an outdoorsy guy, a manly outdoorsy guy. And then Jacob, he was born, he was second, but it says that he was grabbing onto the foot of Esau as he came out, like, wait for me, don't forget me. He was grabbing onto his heel, coming out. And Jacob was different. He loved to stay at home, and he loved to cook with his mom. Now, they probably didn't have a kitchen like this. It was more like a tent, but he would stay home and do things with his mom. And so they were just two different kinds of guys, right? Are you guys the same as your brothers and sisters? Are you a little different? Some of you might love to do all the same things. Some of you might be very different, but I hope we're all following one God. So here's the story. Jacob one day was there, and he was cooking a big pot full of soup, right? And Esau comes in, and Esau, a little on the dramatic side, comes in. He's like, I'm so hungry, I'm about to die. Jacob, give me some of that soup. And Jacob, now he could have been, sure, brother, here's some soup. I hope you're feeling better. But no, Jacob goes, there's something I want. And this could be the time where I could get what I want. Uh-oh, here we go, dun, 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 dun. All right, is that ever a good way to talk about your brother or to do things with your brother? Do you ever do that? You know, if she gives me that, then maybe I'll give her that. If he gives me that toy, maybe I'll give her that toy. Do you wheel and deal with your brothers and sisters? Or do you share kindly and nicely? Well, I wish I could tell you that Jacob was kind and just shared, but he had something, Esau had something that Jacob wanted, and guess what it was? It wasn't a toy. It was much bigger than a toy. It was called a birthright. Now, what is a birthright, you might ask? So I'm going to tell you. The birthright was given at that time to the person who was born, the first boy born. All right? And so he would receive, in his birthright, he would receive all the riches of the father and of the grandfather, right? And so let's think about who Jacob and Esau's parents were, right? Isaac was their father. Abraham was their grandfather. Do you remember how we said at the beginning Abraham was very, very wealthy, right? Well, Isaac was getting all that wealth from Abraham, and he built more wealth. So it was a lot of money and a lot of servants and a lot of cattle and a lot of everything. And so it was a big, valuable birthright. And he also got to be the head of the family. And so that meant something to Jacob. Esau, not so much, but, they would spend time talking. Isaac would sit down with the boys. And Abraham was in their life till, he didn't pass away till the boys were about 15. So he got a long time. Could you imagine sitting with Abraham and letting him share the story about how God led him out to Canaan? How God told him what to do and he just obeyed, right? And how God said, all this land will be for your children's children. Wait, that's them. That's Jacob and Esau. Children's children. And there will be as many descendants as the stars in the sky. Wait, that's them. They're represented by some of those stars, right? All this land, all this is going to be for them. And Jacob would sit at the feet of Abraham and Isaac, and he would listen. And he would take deep into his heart everything they were saying. Esau, not so much. He was more interested in going outside, doing something else. He didn't really sit and listen to all those stories and take them in. So here's what happened. Jacob knew this. And when Esau came in that day and said, I'm about to die, I'm so hungry. And he says, give me some soup. Jacob says, okay, I'll give you some soup if you give me your birthright. Now, if that was you or me, we'd be like, no way. I'm not giving you all of that just for a bowl of soup. But Esau, he really wasn't valuing all of that. And he's just hungry. And he said, what good would a birthright be if I die of hunger? Just give me the soup. And so Jacob says, okay, I'm going to give you the soup, but you must promise. Make a solemn promise before God. Because Jacob was a little nervous, as he should be, that when Esau was full, he'd eaten all the soup, that he might say, no way, I'm not giving up my birthright. So he made him promise before God that he would do it. And he did. He sold his birthright for a bowl of soup. What do you think, guys? Would you want to cheat or trick your brothers or sisters into something so important like that? No, me either. And it's so easy to say that in our situation, but do we let ourselves get drawn in by things? Do we get jealous of others? Jacob was very jealous that Esau had that birthright. And he often thought, you know what? I don't think it's so great that Esau has something so wonderful as a birthright. And he also often thought, I wonder how I could snatch it from him. And then he did. He was ready with that bowl of soup, ready to take something away from his brother that was so valuable. And here's the big story. He knew Jacob's heart. He knew that Jacob was one who sat and listened to Abraham, who sat and listened to Isaac. He knew that he was going to be the one to eventually lead the family. He knew he was going to be the one to eventually get all of that. He was going to put Jacob in charge. But Jacob didn't let God work. He decided, look at these hands. He decided to take things in his own hands. And guess what? When we take things in our own hands, we normally mess them up. We've got to let God lead. God had a beautiful plan, and Jacob's out here messing it up. And all he had to do was serve and love God, and it would have been such a better plan. So we're going to see what happened. More with Jacob and Esau, more with Jacob later. But I just want you guys to think about when your sisters or brothers have something, do you want to cheat them? Or do you want to let God provide for you what he wants for you? All right? Good. Now, hey, I was thinking about this story and thinking about what can we do to help ourselves not want to take from our sisters and brothers. And I mean, the answer is so easy. Always so hard to do sometimes, but so easy to answer. Pray and talk to God. Tell him your heart. Tell him what's going on with you and ask him to help you. And another great thing to do is, well, first off, obey when God asks you to do something. Third, serve. All right, are you guys serving others? If Jacob would have been like, sure, brother, let me share and let me serve you, and given him that soup, he never would have gotten all this trouble that's going to be happening. So, are you serving others? You know, it's Valentine's. I love this season of giving and loving others, loving your neighbor. And so I wanted to tell you guys another thing that we've been doing with TVC Kids. Did you guys know that TVC Kids get some missions money every year? We get some money that's given to our department to share, to our department to love our neighbor. Given to our department, it's going to go out from your on your behalf. And so I decided this year what we would do with that missions money is give it to 4 different projects in Guatemala that sponsor compassion children. What do you think? Is that a good way to give? Yeah? All right. Well, we're going to give to those 4 different places. And what are they going to give? They're going to give them food and clothing, and they're going to teach them about Jesus. So I was reading and thinking about the other day the man who started Compassion. His name is Everett Swanson. And, you know, he didn't sit down one day and say, I'd like to start this giant business, and I'm going to hire all these employees and do all this stuff. You know what he did? He looked around. He's like, who needs to be loved? Who needs to be served? And he prayed. And he saw children that needed food. And he saw children that needed clothing. And he saw children that needed to hear about Jesus. That's how Compassion started. Wait a minute. Can you look around for people in need? Mm-hmm. Can you look around for people who need to hear about Jesus? I know you guys can. You know, Everett Swanson is the great-great-grandfather of some of our very own TVC kids. They're grown-up kids now, but they were in our TVC Kids program. It's their great-great-uncle who started that. Just like you, just like me, let's look out. How can we love our neighbor? How can we love others and serve others today? Think about that the whole rest of the month, the whole rest of the year. If Jacob would only have loved and served his brother instead of been cheating and selfish, how can we guard our hearts, turn our hearts on to love each other, love one another, love our neighbor, look out for people to serve? It may be just as simple as sharing a bowl of soup. Can you guys do that? Look for ways to love and serve others today. I love you guys, and I hope to see you all this week. We'll be talking more about these concepts in all our daily devotions, so I hope you guys will come and see me during the week and share some soup and love with your friends. See you guys.